3 years ago, I thought I had everything figured out. I had a job I actually liked, project coordinator at a mid-sized architecture firm in Denver, the kind of place where people brought their dogs to work on Fridays and argued passionately about coffee beans. I had an apartment with good light and a balcony where I grew tomatoes every summer, badly but still, and I had 2 people I trusted completely, my fiancé and my best friend of 11 years. I don't have either of them anymore, and honestly, I'm better for it. But let me back up. I met Nadine the first week of grad school at the University of Colorado. We were both crammed into a tiny seminar room, both completely lost, both pretending we weren't. She leaned over and whispered, "Do you understand a single word this man is saying?" And I laughed so hard I had to pretend I was coughing. That was it. 11 years, just like that. We did everything together. We survived thesis defenses and terrible roommates and the kind of heartbreaks that make you eat cereal for dinner for 2 weeks straight. When I got the job at the firm, she was the first person I called. When her dad got sick, I drove 4 hours to sit with her in a hospital waiting room and didn't say a single useful thing, but I was there. That's what we did. We showed up for each other. So when I started dating Evan, naturally, she was part of it too. Evan was a structural engineer. Tall, a little quiet, the kind of man who remembered small details. Your coffee order, which side of the bed you preferred, the name of your childhood dog. We met at an industry mixer and spent 2 hours in the corner talking about everything except work. I thought he was wonderful. I still think he was wonderful, in a lot of ways. That's the part that never gets easier. He and Nadine got along immediately. Of course they did. She was charming and funny, and I wanted the people I loved to love each other. Looking back, I can see exactly what I was too close to see then, the way she'd touch his arm when she laughed, the way he'd seek her out first at gatherings, the way certain conversations went quiet when I walked into the room. But I wasn't looking for it. I was planning a wedding. Evan proposed at Christmas. A small moment, just the 2 of us in my apartment with bad takeout and a movie neither of us was actually watching. Symbol ring, my grandmother's cut. I cried. He cried a little too, which I teased him about for weeks afterward. Nadine was my first call that night. She screamed. She cried. She said she was so happy for me she couldn't breathe. She asked to see pictures of the ring. She already knew it was coming. I found that out later. I found out on a Tuesday in February, 8 months into our engagement. I had come home early. The pipes at the office burst, one of those freak Denver cold snaps that catch everyone off guard, and they sent us home at noon. I remember thinking it was a gift, this unexpected afternoon. Maybe I'd finally reorganized the closet. Maybe I'd actually read something that wasn't a project brief. My key was in the lock before I heard voices. I told myself it was the TV. I am embarrassed by how long I stood in the hallway telling myself it was the TV, but the TV was off. I could see that from the doorway. I don't need to describe what I found. You can fill in the details. What I will tell you is that Nadine was the one who spoke first, not Evan. "Nadine," she said, "this isn't what it looks like." I remember thinking very clearly it is exactly what it looks like. Evan couldn't meet my eyes. He kept running his hands through his hair, kept starting sentences he didn't finish. "Sorry, I didn't mean I'm sorry." He was sorry, that was the whole of it. But Nadine looked at me with this expression I had never seen on her face before, something almost defiant, and she said, "You should hear us out." I asked them both to leave. She didn't move right away. She said there were things I didn't understand. That it was more complicated than I was making it. That she hadn't meant for this to happen. 11 years, I said. She finally left. The weeks that followed were the kind that rewire you permanently. There's the obvious grief, the engagement, the future, the person you thought you were going to build something with. But the grief about Nadine was different. It was older somehow, deeper, because we had been woven into each other's lives so long that I didn't know how to separate what was mine from what was ours. Playlists, inside jokes, mutual friends who suddenly had to choose sides without wanting to. I gave the ring back. I broke the lease on the apartment we'd been planning to move into. I cried in my car in parking garages more times than I can count. I did not try to talk to either of them. Evan tried to reach out twice. I didn't respond. What was there to say? He had made his choice with perfect clarity in my living room in the middle of the afternoon with my best friend. I didn't need more information. Nadine texted once, about 3 months later. It said, "I miss you. I know you're not ready, but I hope someday you'll let me explain." I read it. I didn't reply. I'm not sure what explanation could have been offered that would have mattered, and I wasn't interested in being the audience for her absolution. What I did instead was work. I dove so deep into the firm that I practically became structural. I took on extra projects. I stayed late. My boss, a woman named Frances who wore the same 3 blazers in rotation and said exactly what she meant, noticed. She started pulling me into pitches I would normally have been too junior for. She said with very little ceremony, "You're better than you think you are. Act like it." I tried to act like it, and somewhere in those 18 months of burying myself in work, something shifted. I stopped waking up and feeling the loss first thing. I started running again, badly at first, then steadily. I redecorated my apartment. I had dinner with friends I'd let go quiet during the engagement. I traveled to Portland alone for a long weekend and walked around in the rain and ate at a restaurant by myself and felt for the first time in a while like I was someone I wanted to spend time with. And then I met James. He came in as a client. His family had owned a building in the historic district for 30 years and wanted to do a full adaptive reuse, convert what had been a department store into mixed-use residential. Big project. The kind that gets written up in architecture publications. Frances assigned me as the lead coordinator. James Sullivan was not what I expected. He was quiet in meetings in a way that made you want to fill the silence, until you realized he wasn't uncomfortable. He was just thinking. He asked good questions. He remembered things. He brought coffee to the second meeting without being asked, because he'd noticed I'd been holding an empty cup at the end of the first one. I told Frances after the third meeting that I thought there might be a conflict of interest developing. She looked at me over her reading glasses and said, "Then wrap the project handoff by end of quarter and stop being ridiculous." I did. He asked me to dinner the week after the handoff was complete. We took it slowly. I told him early on that I was still recalibrating, that I didn't fully trust my own judgment about people the way I used to. He said he understood, and then he actually demonstrated that he understood, which is rarer than people admit. He didn't push. He showed up consistently in small ways that accumulated into something I started to need. By the following spring, we were together in a way that felt solid and quiet and real. Nothing like the bright, eager, "Look what we have" of my engagement. This felt less like fireworks and more like someone handing you a warm cup of something on a cold morning and sitting down next to you without needing to announce it. I was happy. Genuinely, quietly happy. I didn't realize how long it had been since I could say that. The gala was in October. The Colorado Design Foundation hosts it every year. Firms from across the state, some national names, a lot of people in good clothes talking about buildings. My firm was being recognized for the adaptive reuse project, which meant I was on the guest list. James came with me. I didn't think about the possibility of running into her. I should have. Denver is not a small town, but it's not New York either, and Nadine ran adjacent to the same professional circles. I don't know why I didn't consider it. I was at the bar with James waiting for our drinks when I heard her. Not her voice exactly. More like the awareness of her. 11 years of knowing someone gives you a kind of peripheral perception you can't explain. I turned before I consciously decided to. She looked good, she always had. Same dark hair, same particular posture, like she was perpetually about to say something clever. She was with a small group of people and she was already looking at me, which meant she had seen me first and had been deciding what to do. She chose to come over. "Laurel," she said. My name in her mouth felt strange, not bad exactly, just distant, like hearing a song you used to love played in a different key. "Nadine," I said. There was a pause that lasted about 2 seconds too long. Then she smiled the way people smile when they're performing ease they don't feel. "You look great," she said. "I heard about the project award. That's huge." "Thanks," I said. "It was a good year." She glanced around at the venue, at my dress, with that particular assessment I remembered from 100 shopping trips and 100 nights out, the one where she was taking inventory. Then her gaze settled somewhere to my left, and she said, "Are you here alone?" And there it was, the question she actually wanted to ask, the one underneath the small talk. I had a choice in that moment. I could have said yes, could have kept whatever wall I built intact, or I could let her see. Not to wound her. I want to be honest about my own motives. But because I was done arranging myself around her comfort, I was done making myself smaller so she could feel better about what she'd done. "I'm here with my husband," I said. I watched something move across her face. Surprise, recalculation, and something I couldn't quite name. She said, "I didn't know you'd gotten married." "It's recent," I said. "James, come here a second." He was 2 feet behind me, perfectly relaxed, a drink in each hand. He turned and smiled at her, the open, easy smile of a man with nothing to prove, and held out the hand that wasn't holding a glass. "James Sullivan," he said, "and you are?" I watched it happen. Nadine's face went very still. The kind of still that's actually the opposite of still, that's everything moving at once underneath the surface. She looked at James, she looked at me, she looked at me, she looked back at James. She knew his family. Of course she did. The Sullivans were not an obscure name in Colorado development circles, and Nadine had spent years angling to work in exactly those circles. She knew what his family owned, what they were building, what his name meant in rooms like this one. What she had not known until this moment was that he was mine. "Nadine," she said, and shook his hand. Her voice was steady. "I'll give her that." "Great to meet you," James said, pleasantly, without any indication that he knew who she was. I had told him. He simply chose not to perform it. She turned back to me, and for a moment, just a moment, the performance dropped. "You're happy," she said. It came out like something between a statement and a question. "Yes," I said, "I am." She nodded slowly, said something vague about having to get back to her group, excused herself, and walked away without the easy confidence she'd arrived with. James handed me my drink. He didn't say anything. I took a sip and watched the room and thought, I didn't do that for her. I didn't do it to win anything. I did it because I was standing in a room full of people in a good dress next to a man who makes me feel like myself. And I was done pretending I owed her anything. Not an explanation, not an audience, not the version of me that was still waiting for her to admit what she'd taken. She never did admit it, not properly, and that used to hurt in this open, raw way that made it hard to breathe. Now it just feels like old weather. There are things I know now that I didn't know 3 years ago. I know that the most dangerous betrayals don't come from enemies. They come from the people who have your phone password and know your coffee order and have seen you cry about things you've never told anyone else. The ones you would have trusted with your life, because you already had without realizing it. I know that grief doesn't move in a straight line, and that healing looks less like recovering and more like just accumulating evidence that you're okay, small proof, groceries bought, miles run, projects finished. Dinners eaten with people who see you clearly and choose to stay. I know that I spent a long time believing I was partly to blame. Not for the betrayal itself, I got clear of that eventually, but for trusting too easily, for not seeing the signs, for being the kind of person who thought love was something you were safe inside of, instead of something you kept choosing and building and watching. I don't believe that anymore. That's not what the lesson is. The lesson is simpler and harder. Some people are not who they show you, and when you find out who they actually are, the worst thing you can do is argue with the evidence. The best thing, the only sane thing, is to believe them. I believed her when she showed me who she was. I just stopped carrying the version of her I'd invented. James and I bought a house last spring. Small, older, needs work, which felt appropriate, because the things that are worth keeping usually do. We have a dog now, a shepherd mix named after a street in Portland, which will make sense to exactly no one except me. We have dinners on Sunday nights with his brother's family, and my colleague Faye and her husband and whoever else shows up. The kind of casual, layered social life I didn't think I'd have again after everything collapsed. I still think about Nadine sometimes, less than I used to. I wonder if she and Evan are still together. Last I heard, second-hand and unconfirmed, they weren't. And then I realize I don't actually need to know. The curiosity is just an old habit, like checking the weather in a city you used to live in. There's no dramatic ending to what happened between us, no final confrontation, no apology that arrived and meant something, no clean closure, just a slow, unglamorous process of detaching myself from a friendship I had outgrown the truth of, and finding, on the other side of it, a life that was more my own than anything I'd had before. At the gala, when I watched her walk away, I thought I'd feel something bigger. Triumph or relief or grief, the end of something that deserved a ceremony. What I felt instead was quiet. The good kind. The kind that means you're not in the middle of the story anymore. You're just living, and the living is enough. I used to think the hardest part of what happened was the betrayal itself. The Tuesday afternoon, the key in the lock, the voices I told myself were the TV. But looking back now, I think the hardest part was the year after. The slow, unglamorous work of figuring out who I was when the two people I had trusted most were gone from my life at the same time. There's a version of the story where I become bitter, where I close off, stop trusting, build walls thick enough that nothing good can get through either. I understand that version. I was close to it, more than once, but bitterness is just grief that stopped moving, and I had too much life left to let it calcify. What I learned, not quickly, not cleanly, is that integrity has a kind of long memory. Not in a mystical sense, not in any way I can't account for. Just practically, the choices people make accumulate. Nadine made choices over a long period of time that told the truth about who she was. Evan made choices too, and I made mine. To believe in people I loved, to trust them with my real life, to not hedge or protect myself into emotional isolation. None of us escaped the weight of what we chose. That's just how it works. The tricky thing about being deceived by someone close is that it can make you feel foolish for having trusted them. Like your own openness was the problem. I spent time believing that. I audited my own character looking for the naivety that had let this happen, as if the flaw was in me for not seeing it coming. But that's the wrong lesson. The right one is harder to sit with. I trusted well with what I knew. They chose to be unworthy of it. Those are two separate facts, and conflating them only punishes the wrong person. What actually changed me, what built the thing I'd call resilience, though I hate that word for how clean it sounds, was deciding to stay in the arena anyway, to take the project Francis handed me even when I felt like a shell, to show up for dinner with friends when I would rather have disappeared, to let James matter to me even when part of me was still quietly cataloguing reasons not to. Courage isn't the absence of fear about being hurt again. It's just continuing anyway, with your eyes open, because the alternative is a life lived entirely in defense. Nadine looked at me at that gala and saw what she expected to see. Someone she had left behind. What she didn't know is that the leaving had been the making of me. Not because suffering is good, but because what I built after was more deliberately mine than anything I'd had before. The job, the house, James, the Sunday dinners, the dog with the ridiculous name. I chose all of it consciously, with my own hands, after everything that had been assumed or inherited or tangled up in someone else's story had fallen away. She went pale when she realized who I'd married, and I understood in that moment that I didn't feel triumphant. I felt something quieter, settled. You don't have to perform recovery for anyone. You don't have to make sure the people who wronged you can see how fine you are. You just have to actually become fine. Actually build the life, and then the rest takes care of itself. That's the whole of it. Do the work. Make the choices. Stay honest about who deserves space in your life and who has shown you clearly that they don't. The rest is just time.